At some point in life, most men find a place that feels safe. The career is established. The routine is set. The sharp edges of early adulthood have been smoothed down. And it feels good. It's supposed to feel good. But very few people talk about what can happen when that feeling of safety quietly becomes the most important thing in your life. I've been thinking about a particular kind of man. Not someone who failed, not someone who checked it out. Someone who did everything right, built a stable life, managed the responsibilities, got to a place where things are fine, genuinely fine. And somewhere in the fines, in the steady, manageable, predictable fines, something starts to happen that you didn't notice right away. Not stop growing, not dramatically, not with a moment he can point to, just gradually, almost invisibly. The days start to resemble each other. The challenges get smaller or more familiar. The version of himself he brings to the world stops evolving. And that comfort, that felt like arrival, slowly starts to feel like something else, something harder to name. I think most men after 40 know this feeling, even if they've never described it quite this way. There's a version of your life that runs smoothly. The routines, the obligations, the things that work. And then there is this background sense that something in you has gone a little quiet. The hunger that used to push you forward. The curiosity that used to pull you toward new things. The willingness to be uncomfortable in service of something bigger. And all of it just softer than it used to be. And from the outside, nothing looks wrong. The life is functioning. The responsibilities are covered. People who know you saying that you're doing well. But inside, there is this subtle awareness that you've stopped being surprised by your own life. That the days have stopped asking anything genuinely new of you. And that the man who shows up today is roughly the same man who showed up last year and the year before that. But here comes the strange part. The comfort zone that most men fall into after 40 doesn't feel like a trap. It feels like wisdom, like finally having the maturity to stop chasing things that don't actually matter, like knowing yourself well enough to stop putting yourself through unnecessary difficulty. And some of that is true. But the truth is deeper than that. Because there's a very important difference between the peace that comes from knowing yourself and the comfort that comes from avoiding yourself. One is a genuine arrival. The other is a slow disappearance. And most men never notice which one they are living until the disappearance is already well underway. The comfort, that comfort zone. Today, this word is used a lot. Comfort zone, a place that doesn't announce itself. It just makes everything feel manageable. And then it makes manageable feel like enough. And then, quietly, it makes enough feel like all there is. Comfort is not the enemy. Rest is not the enemy. And stability is not the enemy. A man who has worked hard for 2 decades deserves more ease in his life. That's real. But there's a specific kind of comfort that operates differently from rest. Rest is temporary. It restores. It gives you back to yourself. The comfort zone I'm talking about is permanent, or tries to be. It doesn't restore. It replaces. It replaces the challenge with the avoidance of the challenge. The growth with the avoidance of the growth. And the honest confrontation with yourself. With a smooth, well-managed surface that keeps the real questions at a comfortable distance. And this is where things become interesting. Because a man in that kind of comfort often doesn't feel stuck. He feels stable. And stability is one of the most effective disguises that stagnation ever wears. Most men never notice this distinction. They experience the comfort as a reward, when it's actually slowly becoming a cage. And something changes after 40. That makes this particular trap more powerful than it was before. The cost of discomfort goes up. When you're younger, discomfort is cheaper to tolerate. You have more resilience, more energy, more of the recklessness that makes risk feel exciting rather than threatening. But after 40, something shifts. The body is less forgiving. The stakes feel higher. The things you built feel more precious. And therefore, more worth protecting. And so, the pull toward comfort becomes stronger precisely when the risks of it are greatest. Because a man at 45 who stops growing has potentially decades ahead of him to live inside that narrowing. Most men never notice this calculus until it's already been running for years. They just know that the world feels a little smaller than it used to, that they feel a little less alive than they remember being, that somewhere in the safety, something essential has gotten quiet. Here's the psychological truth I want to sit with for a moment. Human beings are not built for permanent comfort. Not at any age, but especially not at midlife. The psyche, the interior of a man, needs friction to stay alive. Not suffering, not necessarily hardship, but genuine challenge. The experience of being asked for something you're not entirely sure you have. The discomfort of stretching towards something you haven't yet become. Without that friction, something in a man goes soft. Not his body, his sense of himself. The sharpness of knowing who you are, what you're capable of, what you actually stand for when something tests you. All of that requires ongoing contact with difficulty. And when a man organizes his life to eliminate that contact, when the priority becomes keeping things smooth and undisturbed, the self that gets revealed under pressure starts to feel like a stranger. Because he hasn't been visited in a long time. And this is one of the quietest losses of midlife. Not a dramatic collapse, just a man who slowly traded the aliveness that challenge produces for the comfort of never being tested. And by the time he notices, he's not sure he remembers what that aliveness felt like. So let me ask you something honestly. When was the last time you did something that genuinely made you uncertain of the outcome? Not reckless, not irresponsible. Just something that asked you something real of you, that required you to show up as more than the polished, managed version. They had the chance of not working out. For some men, that happened recently. They can point to it. For others, and I think this is more common than it sounds, the honest answer is, it's been a while, maybe a long while. And I'm not saying that as an accusation. I'm saying that because that gap That gap between the last time you were genuinely challenged and today is roughly the size of the comfort zone you're living inside. Maybe you've noticed this too. The way the days have started to feel like a version of each other. The way you're very good at your life without it ever quite surprising you. The feeling, that feeling, isn't apathy. It's a man who has made himself too safe to find out what he's still capable of. The dangerous comfort zone many men fall into isn't dangerous because it destroys anything quickly. It's dangerous because it operates slowly. Because by the time the cost becomes visible, by the time a man feels the narrowing clearly enough to name it, years have passed inside it. And the version of himself that existed before the comfort, the one who was still willing to be tested, still willing to risk something, still curious about what he was capable of, that version has gotten very distant. Not gone, never gone, but distant enough that getting back to him requires more than he expected. The way through is not dramatic. It doesn't require blowing anything up or quitting everything and starting over. It just requires one honest question, asked regularly. Is this keeping me safe or just keeping me small? And then the willingness to act on the answer. Not all at once, not perfectly, just a little more willing to be uncomfortable than you were yesterday. That's enough to change direction. I think about the men I know who seem most alive at 50, at 55. And the thing they have in common isn't that life was easier for them. It's that they never let it get too comfortable for too long. They kept finding things that asked something of them. They kept putting themselves in rooms where they weren't the most capable person. And they kept saying yes to the thing that felt slightly too large. Not out of restlessness, out of respect for who they still had the potential to become. And I think that's available to any man, at any age, in whatever life he is currently living. The comfort zone will always be there, It's not going anywhere. The question is just whether you let it become the whole territory, or whether there's still some part in your life where the outcome isn't guaranteed, where the man inside has room to show up. Let me know in the comments. And also let me know by hitting the like button. And I'd like to have you subscribed for my next video. See you there. Bravo!